So we are here together to awaken to the truth of our being, to the truth of our core nature, our unlimited selves. We have an opportunity together every time we co-create to have epiphanies, to have awakenings. This time that we engage in our fall series is a time that we commit together, if you so choose, to go deeper, to take things to another level. One idea of the Christ presence or the anointed one or the awakening is that it can be activated on an individual level. We can have our own awakening. We can have our own Christ consciousness quickened or our own divine consciousness quickened so that we are awake. But that to truly experience the fullness of the Christ, we must awaken together. That's the body of Christ. The body of Christ is to have it be a communal experience, to have it be with each other, to be able to really deeply look into everyone around you and know there is no separation, know that I am you and you are me, and to be able to have a harmonious awakened experience, and that truly is the great awakening, that truly is the second coming. So in this Go Unity, so in this practice of our fall series, we have the opportunity every year to take a book. And, every year we pick a book, and the book's not going to please everybody. And sometimes people love it, sometimes people don't love it. But regardless of if you love it or not, and in fact, if you are on the path and doing the work, sometimes something that you don't really like that much is the place where your ego or your mind or your sense of whatever that is ready to be transformed is going, there's something to be gained for me here, right? Because presence isn't in the book. Presence is the meeting place between your mind and the book. Presence is the meeting place between your mind and the mind next to you. And so this year we have an amazing book by Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., and it's called The Mastery of Self. And in reading the book, you could go one of two ways. You could take this book and you could take it lightly. And you could read it and hear these talks for the next 6 weeks. And you could go, okay, well, yeah, I get that idea, or that's pretty simple. Yeah, I know that. Okay, we have attachments. And okay, this idea of domestication, that's how we train each other to behave properly. We give and we receive love, or we withhold love so that we can get what we want for our little ego selves inside. And if we get rid of that, then we'll be happier and we'll be free. He calls that domestication, like I'm a domesticated cat, which you can't do. It's impossible. So it's a domesticated dog. But you can either go through it like that, or you can set an intention and you can open up to this lesson on a mystical level, to this message that has been infused with the ruha, or the breath of life. And let it come alive, and let yourself get into such a state of consciousness that you almost enter when you read a really, really good book, a really good book. For me, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle was one of those books where it's like the whole world just kind of gets different. It just stops in a way. It's almost like you're in a movie. Every time you read it, and then that period of your life where you read the book, you realize you were just kind of in an altered state. So we can do that when we open up to it on a new level. And we say, not every time we read something, we go, oh, they do that. Maybe if they read this book, they'd be better. Or, oh, our world needs this book. This is why all this garbage happens, which will probably happen when you read it. But when you really say, if there is something in me to be liberated and transformed from getting this practice at a deep level, I am willing. I am here, I am listening. So really, at a deep, deep level, let me be transformed. I did that as I was going through this book. I've gone through it a few times now, and it has been amazing to me that I can read these concepts as ideas and know them from practicing the practice. But then I can have moments where I'm totally awakened to how I am interacting with these ideas, how I am using them and creating them in a subtle moment where I go, oh, that's me withholding love. That face, that's me trying to train someone how to show up with me. That motion, that feeling, that reaction, that response, and wow, let me just observe it, let me see it, let me become mindful. What would it be like if I were to let that go? What freedom, what consciousness, what expansion, what love might I be able to experience? What might be through that door and on the other side of life for me if I take this and I move it from words on a page to actions in my life? And when we do that, it's crazy. When we do that, it's like the scripture says that when you awaken, you will be disturbed. And then you'll be free. Like Bob Marley, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. So we have an opportunity. The real opportunity is to go deep. Whether we do that in a small group, whether you call a friend that doesn't even know Unity and you say, hey, I got this book. It's on the top list of books. It's not like it's so specific to Unity that you couldn't ask anyone to read it with you, and say, hey, for 6 weeks, want to engage with me? Or you hop online and you do it with the online group, or you do it with your family. But to engage in community and these teachings, and to support each other on a journey of radical self-transformation. And this is the kind of self-transformation that doesn't come from saying there's something wrong with me and I need to reject it. It's the kind of transformation that comes from such deep awareness and mindfulness of the self that you open up to another level of self-love that simply allows. And in that space of allowing, there is openness. In that space of allowing, you come to be like a child. You begin to experience a beginner's mind again. And you stop the war within. So we have an opportunity to become aware and to use awareness of these principles, of this concept, to become more mindful of our behavior, our thoughts, our words, and our beliefs, and then to have action, to put into motion these ideas. You may have heard it said that ideas that are not acted upon are merely entertainment. So let this practice not be entertainment. In order to experience this transformation, it takes a commitment. So I invite each one of us to look at what our commitment's going to be. If we're going to be on the surface level or if we're going to take it deep. If we're going to really activate this. Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. says, a moment of clarity without any action is just a thought that passes in the wind. But a moment of clarity followed by an action is a pivotal moment in our life. A moment of clarity followed by an action. If you look deeply at the work of Eckhart Tolle or Deepak Chopra, they say the first step is just to become aware, that you don't even have to do anything. And in fact, before you're aware, you can't do anything. You're just in ego states of mind or reactionary. There's nothing that can shift. But when we take that step into awareness, that opens the door for the pivotal step of action. He says, Don Miguel Ruiz in the book, he talks about the Oracle of Delphi, and he says those words, know thyself. Know thyself. That's truly the call. That's truly what we are all here to engage. And that when we know thyself, we know our source. Because we're not separate from our source. We could not possibly be separate from our source. So knowing God and knowing the high self are portals to the awakening. Don Miguel says, I often wonder what the world would look like today if some of our modern religions taught that self-knowledge, rather than blind adherence to external guidance and dogma, is the paramount goal of the spiritual path. That truly is the paramount goal of the spiritual path. And it's a goal that goes beyond religions. And it's a goal that if all religions and all people, whether religious or not, whether spiritual or not, embraced it, we would be creating harmony and peace. So what is this journey? This journey is the awakening to the authentic self, the awakening to our true being. In the book, Don Miguel calls it the master self. He says that we're here to awaken and master ourselves. He uses these words, a Toltec warrior, and that's the group of Native Americans that these teachings come from, the Toltecs. A Toltec warrior clears her mind, of beliefs, domestication, and attachments, marking the end of a war within herself for personal freedom. She surrounds herself in an infinite number of possibilities, each one a choice that leads to a unique direction in life. When she makes a choice through her action, she knows that the path she follows is ultimately no different than the other paths, as they lead to the same place. They all lead to the same place. She has no demands for any outcome. Wouldn't that be liberating? She has no demands for any outcome as she realizes that there is nowhere she needs to go and nothing she needs to do in order to find herself. Breathe into that for a moment. There is nothing to do, nowhere to go in order to find herself, to find himself. Can you feel that within you? Finding ourselves, that it's right here. Her action is a result of the pure joy of realizing that she is alive at this moment to choose one of the many possibilities. That's the path. He says you become a master of self also when you can engage in the dream of the planet, which is the reality of the planet. The dream of the planet is the reality of the planet, and the dream of the self is your own idea of your own life, your own reality. You become a master of self when you engage the dream of the planet and everyone within it, without losing sight of your authentic self, while maintaining the awareness that every choice you make is your own. Do you ever feel like every choice you make is not your own? Is it ever difficult to engage in the dream of the planet? Anyone find that challenging at times? Challenging lately? Challenging in this world that we're experiencing, this collective world? Are you ready to be liberated from those challenges? Not to ignore them, but to not be consumed by the frustrations, not be identified with the pain body, not be identified with it, and allow that identity or that experience to cause such deep suffering that you have to tune out. But rather to open into a portal where you become more empowered and more empowering because you are awake and alive and free and you have vision and you recognize the power of your conscious showing up, of how you show up. You become a master of the self when you are no longer caught up in the drama of the party. We're all caught up from time to time, right, in the drama of the party. And in fact, it's a little addicting, it's a little bit engaging to discuss the drama of the party, to see it, to analyze it. When you engage with the dream of the planet, with the awareness and remembrance that it's only a dream, you are able to move freely, liberated from the chains of attachment and domestication. That domestication is how things should be, is what we think we're here to do or to be. It's the ideas other people have for us. And he says this about the mastery of self. More importantly, when you become a master of self, you know how to stay grounded in your authentic self, regardless of what's happening around you. Great invitation, right? Does anyone feel like they're grounded in their authentic self all the time? Or to be able to really engage in a practice that will help you regardless of what's going on around you. Because it's not going to stop, is it? What's going on around you and what's going on within you, in fact, is not going to stop, ever. It'll just be new players, new stories. So the mastery comes not from trying to manipulate the outer circumstances, though the outer circumstances may need change and may be changed, and the inner circumstances may have the opportunity to change and shift. But it's just that that's not where the focus is. Because there's no fuel there, there's no power there. You're not actually in the driver's seat. It's an illusion that there's power there and that you could be engaging in that way and be in a driver's seat. It's actually like locking yourself in the trunk and trying to give directions. I have all these funny things that come to mind when I say that. You also have the awareness to realize quickly when you are acting in a way that isn't helpful to yourself or others. And you can spot those situations when you are feeding your ego or the false sense of self instead of living in peace. In this way, you free yourself from the drama and self-inflicted suffering created by so many people. So what's the cost if we don't do this? What is the risk if we don't engage in the practice and we don't wake up? Well, he goes into a few of the risks. One of the risks is that we begin by being unaware of our domestication, unaware of how we've been programmed. You could think of it as your programming. You could think of it as the manipulation that's happened to you by others, or even self-domestication, that you may have been really well trained by your family system, by the culture around you, by the education system, and now that training is no longer happening, but you have a record in your head of it, and you have lost sight of the knowing that you are playing a record. You don't even realize that. Does everyone know what a record is? It's just thinking that there could be, not really. Everyone would know what a record. But, you take the arm off the record, and you don't even realize that that's your arm, that you have control of taking that off. And you're listening to the record. Self-domestication is the point and the moment where you probably just break off that arm, and it's just on autopilot. And you don't realize that first it was being done to you, and that person, that system, that oppressor, whatever it is no longer doing it to you. You've actually started doing it to yourself. And in fact, when we do it to ourselves, we can even become more angry and more dysfunctional. Because if we are actually able to heal that and look at it, we have to admit that we have been terrorizing ourselves. And that's a hard thing to do. So we tend to externalize it. Like, say I had some lacks in my parenting, right? Who didn't have some things they maybe would do different in their parenting skills, right? But say I wasn't able to say I'm sorry, or I wasn't able to look at what I did do or didn't do that was not mindful or was mindful. If I'm not able to be present to what's up for me or to the experiences others had of me, I might externalize it. I might need to demonize someone and something outside of me that is actually acting and operating like I was or am and am unaware of being able to see. So awakening from our domestications takes an incredible amount of mindfulness and an insane amount of self-love. That self-love is what invites us into being free. So if we stay asleep, we risk being unaware of our domestication. And when we risk that, we enter the territory where we begin living life not from our authentic self or our own vision, but we begin living the life of someone else's vision. It may be the system, it may be a parent, it may be what someone told you you are at one point in life. But you begin living a life that's not your own, not the life you came here to live. And if there is one thing I am committed to, it's to living the life I came here to live. Like, that's my only prayer for myself. I keep it that simple. I'm here to live the life I incarnated to live the life that my soul intended on living. Let me not be distracted from this. Let me engage that life. Because it's a rude awakening when we realize that we've been following a dream or chasing a vision and it's not even our own. What we risk is being identified with our attachments. He gives an example here, a story of a sports game and sporting events, and I know there's a game today. I know that. There's a game today. I don't want to say if it's the Chiefs or the Royals. I know it's the Chiefs. I see a bunch of Royals stuff on people. Which one? It is the Chiefs. I thought it was the Chiefs because I heard that the parking lot tickets were $60 now to park in the parking lot. That's what I heard. Is that getting anyone riled up? Are there any attachments? Are there any attachments to whether or not I know it's the Royals or the Chiefs? We're right on topic. We are right on topic. He gives the example of sports and people becoming so identified with the sporting game or the sports team that even though you might be happy or peaceful in your own independent individual lives, you may go to an event and it may be so infuriating or aggravating that you may have a full-on identified experience with that event, and you may bring it home and begin to live those emotions and live that experience beyond the present moment experience of having a fun or miserable time at the game, right? But you bring it home. He even goes so far in one of the examples to discuss someone that was so upset about a sporting game and experience, they took their lives. Because emotions are emotions, right? They don't go with reason. And when we don't have mastery of self, when we don't have enough presence to go, okay, well, that was really fun when it happened, or that was really infuriating when it happened, but I agreed to that infuriating experience because that's how people play sports. Some people get to go away with a frustrating experience or being a little bummed out, and other people get to go, woo, happy as can be, but that's us coming together to create that experience, and I can't have one without the other, so let me just be happy about all of it because I love sports. That's not a self-statement. Though the Royals have got me a little bit, because they're really awesome. That whole blue downtown Kansas City thing was really something else. I'll vision that for this year too. That example is just one, and you can fill in the blank with anything. What upsets you to such a degree that you take it with you beyond the present moment experience? Is it when someone criticizes you? Is it a conversation? Is it the news? What is it that keeps you from being in the moment that's in front of you? Those are our attachments. That's what's at risk. We begin to relive something over and over, and we create emotions from there. We create body chemistry from there. We create dis-ease from there, and we create limitation from there. That's what's at risk. And how would it feel to live in each moment so fully in that moment, so present in that moment, and be able to walk into the next moment and see it for what it is? Be fully there. Let it have your full attention, no matter how frustrating whatever came before was, or how joyful it was, or how aggravating. To bring your true self with you at all times rather than the ego self and the drama self. When we have deep attachments and when we are asleep, we inflict suffering on ourselves and on others. And a lot of that goes on, doesn't it? Don Miguel Ruiz talks about it like this. He talks about our attachments and that they're really illusions. He said, most people not only attach their wants and desires as they relate to material things, but also their beliefs and ideas. Can you see for a moment how destructive that is? Most people not only attach to their wants and desires as they relate to material things, which we know the dangers of identifying with your material wealth, right? Because that leads to the desire for domination, that leads for the desire of control. But he says also to their beliefs and ideas. And we can clearly see how destructive that can be. It can be destructive in families, it can be destructive globally. It's the learning of conditional love. And we're here, friends, to be in the spirit of unconditional love. He says the system of reward and punishment, or domestication, is used to control our behavior. The result of domestication is that many of us give up who we really are in exchange for who we think we should be. And consequently, we end up living a life that is not our own. Learning how to spot and release our domestication and reclaiming who we really are in the process is the hallmark of a master of self. When we step into this realm, we allow ourselves to experience the present moment. And peace always exists in the present moment. Do you believe you deserve peace even when a circumstance around you is not calling for it? Even when the recipe of what's cooking around you or within you doesn't add up to peace, doesn't add up to bliss? Do you believe it's possible to live in a different way? He says, this living with a quiet mind creates a space for pure bliss that comes from being entirely in the moment. Truly, nothing matters but the present, because it is the only place where life can express itself. I'll add, too, that it's the true place where all activity, all work, all life is done, where all action happens. We all know, if you've ever procrastinated, how much energy goes into doing things over and over again in your mind that you never touch in reality. Has anyone still not gotten their taxes in? The extensions are due October 15th. It's exhausting to live like that. It's frustrating to live like that. And we deserve to live in a different way, and it's available to us in every instant. It's always there and available. The ego and the mind will say, well, no, nothing will get better, nothing will get fixed. I won't really like anything if I let go. I have to stay miserable, or I have to stay attached, or I have to be at war with myself or with someone else in order for any circumstances or any situations to get better. And if I don't engage life like that, it will always be the same, or I will always be dissatisfied. Not true. In fact, liberating the mind is the only thing that will open up to the true satisfaction of spirit. He talks about it like a mirror that's smoky or cloudy, or a mirror that's clear. When your mirror is clear, you can see the divinity in everyone. You can go to any church, synagogue, temple, mosque, or drum circle to find and feel the love and grace of God. For those who are lost in the fog, God just happens to be the focus of devotion that the religion is centered on. In other words, the beliefs and rituals of the religion are more important than experiencing God in the present moment. But for those who are awake, for those who have a clear mirror, everywhere you go, every moment can be a God encounter. Give yourself that gift. Namaste.